Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about how we can represent a thesaurus and implement a simple thesaurus in Python. Now, look at the screen there and I want you to look at that dictionary that is shown. So there is a way that's not necessarily the best way, but a way that you could represent basically the mapping in a thesaurus of a word to a word that has a similar meaning. So for a little bit of background, the idea behind a thesaurus basically is traditionally, an old school thesaurus would have been an actual book where essentially you could look up a word and find other words that have a similar meaning. So an example use case of this could be if you were writing a paper for a course, and if you were using one particular word too many times and if you needed a little bit more variety, you could go to a thesaurus and you could look up some other terms that you could use in some of those places. Now these days, you could also just go to a place such as thesaurus.com to get that information, but you could probably also try to find a paper thesaurus as well. So what we need in order to implement a thesaurus is we need a way to basically model this association between a word and words that have a similar meaning to that word. So this is one option, although not necessarily the ideal option for how to do that, where basically you can say, all right, so the word fast, if the user wants to know a word that has a similar meaning to that, we can associate that word with speedy. Or old could be associated with aged, and slow could be associated with sluggish. And of course, this example has 4 key value pairs, but you could have one that has many, many, many more than that. Now the problem with this representation is that it allows us to map one string to one string, but maybe what if we want to have our thesaurus where we could have one word be mapped to multiple similar words? Well, one way you could do that is you could put multiple words in one string separated by spaces. Another way, though, that we could do that would be to map a key of a string to a value of a set of words that that word is similar to. So if we want to say, well, what are some words that have a similar meaning to fast, we could actually have multiple words that it maps to, right? So notice there's the key, and the value is actually a set rather than just one individual string. It's a set of multiple strings in some cases, or in this case, it's a set with just one string in it. So that is kind of the structure that we're going to try and go for in our implementation, right? So that we can support having a word that has, maybe we could have one that just has one associated, but we can also have ones that have multiple words associated with it. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about, let's just say that you had this thesaurus, and I wanted you to write some code down below that adds 2 similar words for strong. So basically you need to add strong as a new key, and you also need to have that map to 2 similar words. So what code would you add down here to get that? All right. Well, there's multiple ways that this could be done. So one way is kind of this 3-step process where we say, okay, let's map the key strong to an empty set initially, and then once that mapping is there, we can find that set again, and we can call the add function to add 2 words that are similar. So we can add durable and we can add robust, right? Now, let's see, do I have, if I wanted to also do this, I could do this in a one-liner. So for instance, let me bring this over to the mu editor. Whoops, mu editor. And let me make it larger. Oops. So that is some code. Let me paste that. All right. So let me hit the run button. And OK, let me actually print out. So print thesaurus. And so there is strong has been added and 2 similar words added. Another way that I could accomplish this, though, is I could literally just have, thesaurus at the key strong mapped to a set that actually has 2 elements in it, such as that, and it should also work that way as well. So as is common in computer science, there's multiple ways often to solve particular problems. All right, so another just little bit of practice. So how would you add an additional word that could be similar to slow, so that it grows from having one similar word to two similar words. All right, so the way that we could do this is we say thesaurus at the key slow, and that gives us access to that set of elements, and then we call the add function to add, say, gradual to that. So there we go. Now, for this implementation, you should expect us to be able to load words in from a file. So in this case, what I want you to expect is that the Thesaurus program should be able to read a file of the following format, where essentially what you have is you have a word, and then you have basically a space, colon, space. So that's kind of the separator, and then the similar words come after the space, colon, space, also separated by spaces, right? So this line represents that strong, kind of associates with both durable and robust as words that have a similar meaning to it. So the code should be able to load in a file with this kind of format. And when the program runs, basically it should have this kind of command line interface where you can type in words, and if you type in a word, it should tell you what words are similar to that word. If you ask about a word that the thesaurus does not know any similar words for, you can just say, sorry, I do not know that word. And another thing is it should be able to have a feature where we can add. So for example, if you ask for the word similar to brave and it gives you those two, maybe you see one that's missing, you can type add, and you can say, basically, I want to add a similar word for brave, and that word should be, in this case, adventurous. And then if you ask for similar words for brave, again, adventurous should show up. So those are the features, and these are the functions that we're going to want for this implementation. So we're going to have an add word function to add a word to our data. We're going to have a add line function. We're going to have a save and load function for saving data, saving the contents of the thesaurus to a file and loading it from a file, and then also a main function to kind of be the main outline of the program. So let's go through these. How would we implement this add word function? Basically what we should have is the parameters would be, let's see, add similar word to the set of words that are similar to base word. Oh wait, let's see, let me go back to, on that one it was missing a parameter. So we want it to have, give it access to the thesaurus data structure, so the dictionary basically, and then have a base word and the word that is similar to that base word, and basically you should follow these steps. If the base word's not already in there, make sure and add it and associate it with an empty set, and then get the associated set, and then add the similar word to that. So how can this be done? Well, in order to do this, at least one way to do it is we have an if statement to check if it's in there or not. If it's not, we want to associate it with an empty set. And then after that, it should have an entry in the dictionary, and so we can go ahead and add that similar word to that. So add word, not too bad of an implementation. All right, so how about adding a line? So the idea behind this function is as we're, say, loading a data file, and if we get a particular line, that's what the line variable would be, a string. We want it to be able to basically parse this line, so kind of do all the necessary splitting and so on. And then once we have the pairing of, let's say, the pairing of strong and durable, we can call that function that I showed previously, the add word function, to actually get that added into the thesaurus data set. So how would we go about implementing this one? Well, for this one, we have a few steps. So first, we can split on that space, colon, space, and essentially what that would do is it would give us a list that would have, this as one string, you can kind of ignore that, and then the other words as a second string. So if it's a correctly formatted line of the file, the result should basically be a list with two elements in it. So we get that, and then we get the base word essentially. And then the words that are left over on the other side, we actually still want to do one additional split to get those words separated out, so we can get each individual word that the base word is similar to. And once we have those words, we'll go through and loop through each one, and we'll call that add word function. We'll give it the thesaurus, we'll give it the base word, and then we'll give it the word that should be considered similar to that other word as we go through. So there's the implementation of add line. And let's see, I guess this is just an alternate implementation that you could use. All right, so we got add word, we got add line, we need save, load, and main still. So for loading, right, recall the format of the file. The format should be basically something along the lines of that. So remember, imagine having a file that has that kind of formatting for each line, and you need to go through and load that information into the Thesaurus, but also keep in mind you have access to, or you're allowed to use, this add line function. So you already have a function that basically kind of does the necessary processing for a line of the file. So this implementation for loading the Thesaurus could actually be fairly straightforward if you use that function correctly. So if you want to take a screenshot of that code, and then you can try to figure out the implementation for load Thesaurus. All right, so to implement this, what are we going to have to do? Well, we need to open up the Thesaurus file, and then we are going to want to loop through that. But once we get each line, as we get each line, it's kind of, our job is easy because all we need to do is call the add line function. So we can open up thesaurus.txt. If you wanted to, you could change that where you actually ask the user for the name of the file. But in this case, you can just assume to load in from thesaurus.txt. Call read lines, loop through the lines, and then call add line for each line, and that function can take care of processing the majority of that line. And then this function actually also, one thing it does to the line as it's going through them is it processes and handles the new line, gets rid of that, and then it sends it off to add line to do the rest of the processing. All right, and then for saving, basically what we need to do is we need to take a dictionary that has words that are mapped to some number of other similar words. For example, let's go back to something along the lines of this, and it needs to be able to go through a dictionary structured in this way and actually write a file that's formatted basically the correct way, that's formatted with this kind of formatting, right? So how would you implement the save function? All right, so what we need to do is we need to open our thesaurus, of course, thesaurus.txt if we want to just save to that file, or you could ask the user for a name. We want to go through the words and then the similar words in the file, and the V in this case initially is a set, but then we immediately convert it to a list on each iteration. And that way we can use the join function, which kind of makes it easier to get the words that are in that sequence. Well, once we convert it to a list, we can consider it a sequence and basically put spaces between each one. So we write the base word, the space colon space, the similar words separated by spaces, and then a new line at the end. And after we've gone through and done that for every key value pair in the dictionary, we close the file. All right, so we're getting close, right? We've got 4 of the functions basically implemented. Now we just need to basically kind of build that primary program outline using main. So basically main should start up the code and continually sort of listen for, does the user want to ask for similar words? Does the user want to actually add a new similar word to the thesaurus? Or does the user want to exit? So the structure of main, of course, it's going to look a bit different, but you can kind of think about it similar in an outline to sort of like the scorekeeper program, where it needs to, it's a little different because there's not, well, it's a little bit different, but basically you need a loop that needs to go through and have kind of an if-else in there to figure out, am I just displaying a word, are we adding a new word, or are we exiting? So definitely some differences, of course, from scorekeeper, but I want you to try to kind of starting with this baseline outline, right? So there's a few parts that you're going to have to fill in, but I'll walk through kind of what the outline is. So we can start with an empty dictionary for the thesaurus, but then call the load thesaurus function to get whatever data may be in a file loaded in there. And then we're going to have a while true loop. And in this loop, we're going to ask for a command and then basically check one of 3 cases. So if what was typed in was exit, we'll just return so that the program stops, basically. If the command starts with add, that indicates that we need to kind of boot up and do something to ask the user for the base word, the similar word, and then get that added to the dictionary. And then the other case is basically, if it's neither of those two things, we can assume that the user is asking for similar words to this word, but we want to be able to differentiate between whether we actually know about that word and can give the user similar words, or if we don't know about that word, we've got to say, huh, or whatever, or please try another word, something like that. So what should I put in A, in B, and in C to get this finished? All right, so let's look. So for A, we have this, which basically if we're going to add, we need to ask the user for the base word and a similar word. And then we already have a function for getting that word added into the data. So we just call add word with thesaurus, that word, and the similar word. And there we go. So that's what we have to do for A. For B, this is basically the case where we have determined that we have that word that the user is requesting in the dictionary as a key. And so we need to find the words that are associated with that value. And we can say print out words that are similar to text are. And then in this case, I use the join function to basically display those words, and kind of put spaces in between. And I guess one question would be, do I have to convert this to a list first? Well, we'll find out when I go to run this. And then in the case, if you don't know about a word, you can just say, sorry, I don't know that word, something like that, and let the program continue. So let's see. There we go. We have a essentially completed implementation of this program. Now, one thing you probably should do, right, if you were actually going to work on this as a program on your own, you should definitely add comments to all the functions other than main, right? So you'd want to add a comment for save and load and add word. But at least this should be functional. We just have to check and see if that line is going to work out or not. So let's go test it before we finish the video. So let me place that there, and let's place that. And let's also make sure there could already be one created, but let's go and create a file that we can use to test. So that save as thesaurus dot that. All right, replace. So for this, we need to, let's run it, and let's ask for a word that we should have. So strong. So it tells us words similar to strong. What if I say unknown as a word? It says, sorry, I do not know that word. And then let's try slow, and let's try exit. So exit works. Cool. Now let's try to add something. So let me say add, and let's add to strong. Oh, that's string. So add, or let's say, wait, I need to reset. So let's say strong, and then let's add strong. Oh my gosh, I need to learn how to spell, huh? Strong, add, strong. And then what's something that we could add as similar to strong? I already have durable. Let's just say, if only you were in the classroom, you could give me some ideas. Strong, durable, let's say healthy. Healthy. And then if I say strong again, it remembers that. Now, one of the things that is actually kind of problematic is I did not call my save function in this code. So if I type exit, and then if I run it again, it's not going to remember the healthy. So I would want to call save, and we could actually make a save command, or we could just call it when the program exits. There's different ways that we could do it. Let's actually create a save command. Save, then let's just call save thesaurus and pass in the thesaurus. So if I run, let's say strong, let's say, so strong, and let's say add, strong, healthy. Why does it say sorry? I do not know that word. Oh, so I should say if, elif, elif. All right, strong, strong. All right, so it did add healthy. Let me say save, and then let me type exit. So now let me run it again and say strong, and it actually remembered healthy because the save function was called. Now if I just switch over to this tab, it doesn't actually show me the healthy because I would want to close it and reopen it to actually see that. But so let's try and close it, and it might not let us load text files in Mu. That's kind of the problem. So let's go to Thesaurus dot. So there we go. So if I open that up, it does show healthy. So there we go. We have an implementation of this. If you think this is kind of a cool program, feel free to take the code and try to make some improvements. Try to add some features if you want to. Maybe add some comments if you need practice working on your commenting. But otherwise, I think we'll wrap the video up at that point. So thanks for watching, and let us know if you need any additional assistance with this example. Have a good one.